Hey, Jerry Corley here. Just a quick video I wanted to do. I got a question from one of my students, and the question was, "Hey, Jerry, how do you do a joke about something that's serious and yet still make it funny? And without sort of like interfering with the importance of the topic you're talking about." What I did was I showed him how George Carlin does this. George Carlin is an expert at taking something serious and making funny, and he does it in a way where he uses something called a pivot. Something I call a pivot, but you pivot off of the main subject to something that's related to that subject, do a joke about that, then technically everything before that is true. So Carlin used to say, if you're going to talk about current events and socio-political events or, something serious, you have to get to the unassailable truth. Because otherwise people think it's bullshit, right? Speaking of which, this is what this topic is about, this Carlin topic is about. So he says, how do you get to the truth on issues that are subjective, right? Issues of like state of the nation, state of society, morality issues. When you're not dealing with facts, you're dealing with beliefs. So Carlin uses the pivot. So let's watch this quick clip. And I'm going to interrupt at one point to show you another technique he uses, and it's one that will help a lot of you new comedians out there really sort of like establish your position on stage as the authority. So here we go.
There's just enough bullshit to hold things together in this country. Bullshit is the glue that binds us as a nation. Where would we be without our safe, familiar American bullshit?
We're just having a bullshit to hold this whole thing together. Bullshit is the glue that holds the nation together. Bullshit is, so he has it three setups. He says it three times. Most comedians will just say it once and move on, but you don't have time to cement the impression in the audience's mind about what the topic is. Saying it three times establishes confidence, establishes I know what I'm talking about, and also gives the audience a chance to really have it in the brain what the subject matter is. And then so now they're curious because you heighten it three different times. It creates a hook of, this is what I'm talking about. They wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. And the audience is like, okay, I'm eager to hear what the resolution is. So you're also building a hook.
Land of the free, home of the brave, the American dream. All men are equal, justice is blind, the press is free, your vote counts. Business is honest, the good guys win. The police are on your side. God is watching you. Your standard of living will never decline. And everything is gonna be just fine. The official national bullshit story.
Notice another thing he does is he starts to list off those things that are recognizable, those phrases, those cliches, those idioms, the colloquial speak, land of the free, home of the brave, justice is blind, every man is equal under the law. We already know that's not true. And he just rattles off a bunch of them. And in that recognizable moment, the audience is like, yes, I recognize those phrases. This has got to be true.
I call it the American okey doke. Every one of those items is provably untrue at one level or another, but we believe them because they're pounded into our heads from the time we're children. That's what they do with that kind of thing. Pounded into the heads of kids because they know that children are much too young to be able to muster an intellectual defense against a sophisticated idea like that. And they know that up to a certain age, children believe everything their parents tell them. And as a result, they never learn to question things. Nobody questions things in this country anymore. Nobody questions anything. Everybody's too fat and happy. Everybody's got a cell phone that'll make pancakes and rub their balls now,
Then he gets into the bit, and he goes into the pivot where he keeps building. He talks about gadgets in society, distractions, fractionalizing our attention span, and then he goes to the cell phone hyperbole by saying everybody's got a cell phone that can make you pancakes and rub your balls. Of course, we don't have cell phones that can actually make us pancakes or rub our balls. But if they did, I'd be the first in line to purchase it. It's like after the Apple 16, they're going to come up with the Apple happy ending, right? So SE. The pivot is a technique that nobody tells you about in comedy. Like if you were going to use an analogy, you could do something like, honesty in politics these days is like sex in my 16 years of marriage, non-existent. So even though sex has nothing to do with politics, that's the key, is to pick something that is highly dissimilar to the current topic we're talking about. You can do something like use a parallel analogy. This is not related, but you get the idea of what a parallel analogy is with this example. Being a contestant on the Food Network makes you a celebrity chef, like reading Cosmopolitan magazine makes you a supermodel. That's called a parallel analogy. Bill Maher loves the parallel analogy. You can use a cliche that's associated to the subject matter. You could use a parallel cliche, like they say the best way to a man's heart is through his stomach, but the best way to a man's mind is through his gadgets and distractions, like Pornhub. Really? You think the politicians are going to get rid of porn on the internet? They're going to get rid of the easiest distraction in the history of mankind? While they're in Washington making the rich richer through tax schemes, subsidies, and wars, you barely even notice. But I bet you can tell me your favorite search term for xvideos.com. What I'm trying to say is it's hard to rage against the machine when you're busy opening a new incognito window. You see how you took this pivot, and the pivot was unrelated. It's dealing with sex and porn and on the internet, but it still ties into Washington. That's the key. Find something that's far away, then show how it relates. So use the pivot to create things that are funny. Now, when you have that, get a laugh from that moment, then technically everything before that is true. So these are a couple of different ways you can take something that's serious and turn it into funny, is by using the pivot. Practice this. It takes practice and it takes some writing.